Imagine this. You are standing at the front door of the place that is supposed to be safe. Not a club, not a dark parking lot, not somewhere you have to watch your back. Just home. A residential street, late afternoon light, the kind of neighborhood where you can almost convince yourself that whatever trouble exists in the world stays on the other side of the city line. Imagine you have already done the hard part. You left the relationship. You drew the boundary. You said the sentence that gets women punished every day. We are done. We can co-parent, but we cannot be together. You said it plainly, not to be cruel, but because you were trying to survive. Because you were trying to protect your children from the kind of chaos that grows in the shadow of maybe. Now place yourself at the moment when that boundary becomes the trigger. You hear him before you see him, or maybe you see him first and your stomach drops, because your body recognizes danger faster than your mind can name it. A familiar voice, a familiar posture, a familiar entitlement. The kind of presence that says, "You do not get to decide when I am finished." And you are not alone. Your kids are there. Close enough to hear adult words they were never supposed to have to translate. Close enough to witness the tension that is not yelling yet, but already feels like a storm pressing down on the air. The 10-year-old who can read faces. The 8-year-old who will remember every sound. The 3-year-old who does not understand what is about to happen, only that grown-ups are suddenly moving differently. Let the silence stretch like it does in real life. Because the worst moments do not arrive with music. They arrive with a pause, a breath, a hand moving in a way that changes the whole future. Now imagine the first gunshot, not as entertainment, not as shock value, as the instant your life splits into before and after. And your children's childhood does too. Because that is what happened in Washington, District of Columbia, in the Glover Park neighborhood, on February 11th, 2026. This is No Tears for Black Girls, the cases they ignored. I am Samantha Paul. Today's episode is about Rayven Amuan Edwards, a 34-year-old mother of 3 who was shot and killed in Northwest Washington, District of Columbia, and about the terrifying chain reaction that followed. Her 10-year-old daughter injured, her 3-year-old son taken from the scene, an Amber Alert, and a police pursuit that ended with the suspect dead from what police described as an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Before we go further, I need to say this clearly. This episode includes domestic violence, the death of a parent, children witnessing violence, and a discussion of threats and intimidation. If you need to pause, pause. If you need to come back later, come back later. And if you are currently in danger, your safety matters more than any story. One more note for accuracy. The Metropolitan Police Department spells the victim's first name as Rayven. Some local coverage spells her first name as Rayven. In this episode, we will say Rayven, and when we reference other reporting, we will state it as reported. Everything we discuss today is grounded in publicly available reporting and official statements. Where something is an allegation or a family recollection, I will say so. Now, take yourself back to that Wednesday afternoon. According to a public update from the Metropolitan Police Department, on Wednesday, February 11th, 2026, at approximately 4:39 in the afternoon, officers responded to a report of a shooting in front of an apartment complex in the 4100 block of W Street Northwest. Police said they found an adult woman and a 10-year-old girl suffering from gunshot wounds, and they found another child, a juvenile boy, at the scene who was not physically injured. Fire and emergency medical crews responded, and police said the adult woman was pronounced dead after life-saving efforts failed. The 10-year-old girl was transported to a hospital for treatment of injuries that police described as non-life-threatening. The Metropolitan Police Department identified the woman as Rayven Amuan Edwards, age 34. Local television reporting said the shooting happened near W Street and 41st Street Northwest, and noted that police responded along with the Secret Service because the location is close to the vice president's residence. That detail matters because it tells you how fast the scene escalated in terms of law enforcement response. You are not just talking about patrol cars arriving to a neighborhood call. You are talking about an immediate high-alert response on a residential street, while children are still right there in the aftermath. In the first hours after a homicide, the public usually sees a family's devastation as a headline. Woman killed, child injured, suspect on the run. But inside the story, there is a smaller, more intimate tragedy that does not fit neatly into a push alert. A mother is gone, and her children have to be gathered up, identified, comforted, and physically carried out of a scene they should never have been inside. Rayven Edwards was a mother of 3. Local reporting said she had a 10-year-old daughter who was injured, an 8-year-old son who was not physically injured, and a 3-year-old son who became the focus of an Amber Alert after the suspect fled. Police identified the suspect as Stefan Markey Jeter, age 35. According to the Metropolitan Police Department, detectives determined that Jeter fled the scene in a black pickup truck with a 3-year-old boy, and police said the suspect and the victim were the parents of that 3-year-old child. Local reporting described the case as domestic violence and said Jeter was Rayven's significant other. An interim police chief said it was one of the most tragic circumstances he had ever seen and said an entire family was destroyed through the acts of an individual. Those words are hard to hear, but they are not exaggeration. In a matter of minutes, 3 children were pushed into a life where their mother is gone forever, and their father is either the person accused of taking her life or the person they will never see again. 2 days after the homicide, local reporting included comments from Rayven's mother, Lucy Edwards. She said Rayven was her best friend. She described her daughter as loving and nurturing. She said Rayven had lupus, and that despite health challenges, she would work whatever jobs she could, including delivery work, to provide for her children. Lucy Edwards also said there were warning signs before the day of the shooting. She told a local reporter that the suspect had sent Rayven disturbing messages in the past, including messages saying he wished she would die. If you have never lived with that kind of threat hanging over your life, it can be hard to understand how heavy it is. Threats like that are not just words when they come from someone who believes they own you. They are pressure. They are control. They are a person telling you who they are, out loud, before the world is forced to see it. After the shooting, the danger did not end at the scene. According to the Metropolitan Police Department, around 6:30 in the evening, members of the Prince George's County Police Department located the suspect vehicle in Maryland and initiated a vehicle pursuit. Police said the pursuit entered Washington, District of Columbia, and officers joined. The suspect vehicle crashed near 30th Street and Nash Place Southeast, and officers found Stefan Jeter inside the vehicle with what police described as an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. Police said he was pronounced dead and transported to the office of the chief medical examiner. In the middle of that chaos, Rayven's 3-year-old child was missing. Police issued an Amber Alert, and a short time later they said the child was located unharmed at the residence of a family member in Prince George's County, and the alert was canceled. There is a particular kind of terror that exists when a child is missing in the hours after domestic violence. Not because every missing child case is the same, but because the context is the loudest part of the story. A man is accused of killing the child's mother. A gun is involved. A chase is involved. Nothing about that reads like a simple custody dispute. Everything about it reads like emergency. Local reporting also stated that the suspect had an extensive criminal history and that court records included domestic violence, and that he had been sentenced in a federal case years earlier involving illegal firearm trafficking. Those details raise the questions families always ask after an intimate partner homicide. How did he have access? How did he get close enough to do this? And how many warning signs were already in the record? And then there are the children left behind. A 10-year-old girl who was shot and expected to survive. An 8-year-old boy who was physically unharmed. A 3-year-old boy who was missing long enough for an Amber Alert, then located alive. That is what the public record can tell us. What the record cannot quantify is what those children now carry. The way a door sounds when it closes. The way a man's voice rises in a hallway. The way the body remembers fear even when the mind wants to forget. The way a child learns, all at once, that adults can be dangerous and that safety is not guaranteed by a quiet street or a familiar neighborhood. This is why we cover these cases, even when the suspect is dead and there is no courtroom ending. Because the story does not end with the suspect. The story continues in the lives of the children who have to live with what happened. When a case is described as domestic, people sometimes hear it as smaller, private, contained, like it belongs behind a closed door and not in the public square. But there is nothing small about a mother being killed in front of her children in broad daylight on a residential street. And when you zoom out, this is not rare in the way we wish it was. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention published a report analyzing intimate partner homicides of women using data from the National Violent Death Reporting System, looking at the years 2018 through 2021. The report stated that most incidents occurred at the victim's residence, and most involved firearms. It also stated that during the period 2020 through 2021, the proportion of victims who were non-Hispanic, Black, or African American women increased, and that suspects were more frequently previously known to law enforcement, which the report described as a potential missed opportunity for prevention. A separate analysis from the Violence Policy Center, focused on homicides of Black women and girls, reported that Black females were murdered by males at a rate nearly 3 times as high as white females in the year 2020, and that where relationships could be determined, most Black female victims knew their killers, with many killed by an intimate partner. I am careful with statistics because numbers can turn a person into a data point. But they are important for one reason. They prove that these are not random lightning strikes. This is a pattern of violence with recognizable warning signs, predictable points of escalation, and too often, preventable outcomes. Sometimes people ask, why did she not leave? Sometimes people ask, why did she keep talking to him? Those questions sound logical until you realize they are built on a false assumption that the most dangerous moment is staying. In many situations, the most dangerous moment is leaving, or trying to leave, or creating a boundary that removes an abuser's access. That is when control is threatened, and control is the fuel. Now, I want to bring in one more case, not to take attention away from Rayven Edwards, but to underline how often domestic violence follows a recognizable script, even across states and across very different communities. In Bryan, Texas, in the early hours of February 7th, 2025, police said a man called 911 and reported that he had just killed his wife. Local reporting, citing court documents and police, said officers went to the 500 block of East 18th Street around 12:40 in the morning and found 23-year-old Alexis Walls dead inside the home with apparent gunshot wounds. The suspect was identified as Brandon Michael Dickerson. Local reporting said court documents described Alexis Walls as Dickerson's common-law wife. Reporting also stated that the couple's 18-month-old child was in the home at the time and was not physically harmed. One local outlet reported that police said Dickerson told detectives he shot Alexis Walls 15 times because he suspected she was cheating on him. Nearly a year later, on February 3rd, 2026, local reporting said Dickerson pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 50 years in prison by Judge Kyle Hawthorne. The reporting also stated that the Brazos County District Attorney's Office said Dickerson called 911 to report that he had killed Walls, shooting her 15 times. Another local outlet reported that prosecutors called domestic violence a deadly and pervasive issue and included a statement from the district attorney and assistant district attorneys who prosecuted the case, saying Alexis was a light to everyone she met, a loving mother, a beautiful daughter, and a considerate friend. In this case, there is something the public often begs for in domestic violence homicides: a clear, legal resolution. There was an arrest. There was a plea. There was a sentence. But I want to be honest about what resolution means here. It means a man will spend decades in prison. It does not mean a child gets their mother back. It does not mean a family lives the moment a 911 call turned their world into an evidence file. When you place Alexis Walls next to Rayven Edwards, you can see the shared pattern without forcing the stories to be identical. In both cases, the victim was a mother. In both cases, a child was present. In both cases, reporting describes intimate partner violence that escalated into homicide. And in both cases, the public is left staring at the same question that always sits behind these tragedies. What happened in the weeks and months before the day the world found out? Because the day the world finds out is never the first day the danger existed. If you are listening and you are living inside a situation that is getting darker, I need you to hear this plainly. You do not have to wait for things to get worse to deserve help. If you are in Washington, District of Columbia, D.C. Safe is a local organization that supports survivors of domestic violence. Their website is dcsafe.org. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can call 800-799-7233. That is 800-799-SAFE. You can also text the word START to 88788. Their website is thehotline.org. If you are in Bryan, Texas, KBTX reported that victims of domestic violence can contact Phoebe's home. That phone number is 979-775-5355. And if you or someone you know is struggling with thoughts of self-harm, you can call or text 988 in the United States to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Rayven Amuan Edwards should be here. She should be irritated about school drop-offs and grocery prices and tired in the normal way, not absent in the permanent way. Her children should not have a memory bank that begins with violence. If there is one reason we start this show the way we do, it is because imagination is how we practice empathy. It is how we stop treating a woman's death like content and start treating it like community loss. When a mother is killed, the harm does not stop at the victim. It echoes into every classroom her children enter, every holiday, every quiet moment when someone realizes they are waiting for a voice that will never answer. This is Samantha Paul for No Tears for Black Girls, the cases they ignored. Stay loved, stay blessed, stay safe, and remember, whenever you are trapped in a world of darkness, never allow fear to overwhelm you. Believe in your inner spirit and remind yourself of God's first words. Let there be light.